difficulty, as well as some of the citizens, on why it's not happening. And if elected, it will happen under my watch. Thank you.
B-Law would like to speak.
Thank you. Our phone numbers are published. They're in the newspaper, in our Odawa Trails. They're on our business cards. It's easy to get our phone number to the legislative branch. So we have been doing that. Anyone can reach us that wants to. And I have had people calling. Thank you.
I would be opposed to having a Facebook page for the legislative branch. I think that I've looked at and joined groups of the departments from the executive side. I really enjoyed that with the youth. They post a lot of pictures, what they're doing, updates, where they're going, schedule changes. And I think that with the legislative branch, you could put the minutes out there. I think that you could put, live stream. I think that you could, every week, make updates on what phone calls happened when and why that happened. You could put just about anything that happens in tribal council out there for folks to the public, and it's a live feed. So people have comments like, oh, why did that happen? And what discussion was made? You can find out, and legislation can answer that for you.
Fred would like to speak.
Fred Mova. My grandson calls these burner phones. Anybody who wants can call me at 231-838-2874. Miigwech.
Okay. For a moment, before we go any further with questions and answers, we have a tribal police deputy that joined us today because he's new. And he wanted to introduce himself and look at the community to see who we are and get to know us. His name is Ray. He has a last name that's like a lot of ours that are so familiar. I'd like to meet Ray.
Morning, everyone. I'm Officer Ray Purples with the Tribal Police. I'm the community policing officer with the tribe. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Here to interact, so looking forward to meeting all y'all.
Thank you, Ray.
Yes, my name is Joseph here. Facebook issue that we're having here, I can understand where they're coming from. The Facebook is a source of information for everybody where they can contact, during this thing's having problems. During the meetings and everything, which is great when in real time. When you're talking about legislation now, papers and everything like that, not everybody gets the Odawa Trails, but 90% I'd say has a computer. And they spend a lot of time on Facebook. So if the tribal council would put that out there in Facebook as it goes on, I think that would be great. But again, we're having problems here. The fact, cell phones and text messages, that's one-on-one. I understand that. If it's an important cause and they want us to keep it private, it should be private. But when you have a group that has the same kind of comments or commitments or questions, it should be in a public where they can get to it and read it and comment it at the same time. Thank you.
Anyone want to speak on that? Or we kind of just did. So, any more questions?
Arlene's got one.
Oh, Fred.
Yes. If you ask Hillary, emails and text messages are not private. So, truly, I don't believe that any government communication should be secret. If you have something confidential to say, you should go and say it in person. You know, when we wrote the first Open Documents Act, it made emails open. I believe the security of emails and security of text is way too, you know, people take it way too far to keep things secret. They should all just be open. You can text me as much as you want, I don't read texts. I think my phone gets them and it fills up with them, but I don't text because I can't do it backwards. You know, I can't text back with my burner phone. But when you do these texts and these emails, they should be public documents. And if you're using a government phone, it should be public. There's no doubt in my mind that it should be. And I'll look at the Public Documents Act, and if it got changed over the years, you know, I'll try to change it back. I can't promise, like John, that I'm going to change stuff when I get it, because you got to rely on you know, 9 other or 7, 8 other people to try and change things. But I believe it should all be public. Text, emails, whatever we do should all be public. Any question?
Thank you, Fred. We have another question here.
I don't have a question, I have a comment, and I don't know whether that's appropriate or not. Somebody can give me the rules. And so anyway, I was hearing about the technology, but from the position I currently have, and I'm sorry I don't have kept data, I do think I need to keep track of that now, is because you're talking about reaching the citizens, and yet you talk about, you know, the input of your elders are so important. But in my current position, when I talk to elders who call me on the phone, and sometimes they have to use a relative's phone because they don't have one, and I ask them about computers. Some have a computer, but they don't have the internet. And I ask them about going to the website to get what they need to, because they have an urgent need. They're not able to do that. And so then my thought is, perhaps you're leaving out a very needy segment of your population because they don't have access, or they don't have the knowledge to access what is available. I mean, to the technology access to get there to perhaps make a comment about their needs. So again, you're having a very vulnerable population that still doesn't have access.
Andrew Stitch. About the boundary areas, I'm wondering the cost of that for lawyers or for that, because we have a bigger debt called the Odell Casino. Why wouldn't we pay that off before we would go and to get more debt? Marcy.
The money that was allocated for the reservation boundary litigation was $4.5 million. And that was anticipated to carry out through the 5 years or more, 5 to 7 that it would take us to get through this. And as far as the reason that it was decided to do it at the time was because it was started during the Obama administration. And as some of you may know, the Obama administration did a lot of good things for Indian country. So we probably should have started it a little sooner. Why he was earlier in his term. It might have moved along more quickly, but it was just felt that it was a good time to do it. So that's why we did it. And as far as paying off the debt, I am in agreement with you. I think we should be focusing on the debt, and that's what we have done. That $40 million worth of debt that we were carrying is now less than half. Well, no, right about half of what we started with when we did the refinance. I'm going to make an unpopular statement. One of the things, my feeling was that as long as when you're a business owner, you're the last person to get paid. So we were still paying per cap why we were carrying this large amount of debt. And as a business owner, you pay your debts first, and then you pay yourself last. So had we really been that concerned about paying off debt, we could have withheld per cap and focused that money on paying off debt. But we didn't, because we wanted to make sure that the citizens did get that annual distribution, no matter, the amount that we were giving, we were still giving the people something at Christmas time. So there were a lot of reasons why we did the things we did, and I don't know if starting the reservation boundary litigation, if the timing would have ever been exactly the way we needed it to be.
Jack Wagner.
As a tribal citizen, that has been one of my concerns for well over the 20 years that we've been in existence is very little decisions have ever come forward from the citizens first before they're made. So there is talk, and I'm involved in referendums where citizens vote when we're talking about spending millions of dollars, because those millions of dollars affect each and every citizen. And so far, the citizens really have not had a voice. If the citizens had a voice, would we have voted in the maximum consumer operation? Maybe not. But the citizens are entitled to be part of the process, and so far they haven't. And that's one of the things I'd like to see happen, is that whether it be anything over 500,000 or anything over $1 million requires citizen vote before we go forward. Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there any more questions? Right here.
I don't know, I'll start with you. You're saying, we have a good constitution, but, parts aren't being followed. I wonder if there are certain laws or duties you feel like, in particular, council's taken on inappropriately, and what the effect of that has been.
Yeah, it's a philosophical difference between myself and some others that have basically moved power and authority, or responsibility and authority, from the executive into corporations. And then those corporations become responsible to the council. Those do a couple of different things that are not really apparent. Number one, the process loses transparency. Now we have small groups of people making decisions on our money that's being spent out there in these small corporations that are not particularly open to the public. In the past, like our casino was a commission or board or whatever you want to call it, that had open public meetings, and I went to them, other people went to them, and they were responsible to the people. And now they're responsible to tribal council. So it's kind of gone against the grain of openness and transparency. The other thing that it does, and this is not readily apparent, but it moves a corporation under the umbrella of tribal council. Tribal council can declare sovereign immunity and not allow anybody to sue them. Whereas if they were under the executive, then and they did something wrong, or tribal citizens thought that they were doing something wrong, they would have the authority to sue them. So basically, we've made these things into single branch government operations that are not affected by the executive or the judicial branches of government. And so I really believe that those things need to move back towards the way they were. They don't necessarily have to be undone, but they need to be open to the public. The processes need to be more open and public, because we're spending government money, the tribe's money, in those operations, and they need to be entirely open, transparent governmental operations. Be question.
Anyone?
into the question as to the Constitution. There are parts of it that are very beneficial, and there's parts that need to be fine-tuned. Right now, we have very little in place, as Fred was talking about the sovereign immunity from being sued. And I'm not 100% comfortable with that because we're supposed to be doing the business of the citizens. And right now, ain't no difference, they can't sue me. And I don't like that, Somewhere it has to be that, okay, I gotta be a little bit more careful because I could be sued. Unfortunately, it does put some limitations on people just not, sorry, but don't care. I'm just gonna do what needs to be done and not worry about how it turns out. And sometimes it appears that way, so yeah, we need to do some modifications. And maybe the modifications of eliminate that not being able to be sued because you're supposed to be representing all of the people. And our judges, maybe we should be looking at voting them in. Our police chief, maybe he should be voted in. And we have a police commission to assure that the law enforcement is doing what needs to be done. Over the years, different citizens have called, but that's not within our jurisdiction. Now, what is within the jurisdiction? All of that needs to be clarified. And even with governmental operations, some of our departments, there is no recourse that citizens have because the different laws and statutes are not there in place. Thank you.
Tamara would like to speak.
I would have to say that the ethics committee is made up of 3 tribal council members. Goes back to what John said, it should not be that way. It should be made up of tribal citizens that that actually vote on it, or it goes to a different committee. It shouldn't be your peers to make a decision about something that's ethical or not ethical that you've done. I don't think that's right. I guess that's all I have to say.
Cheryl would like
To speak.
I'd like to speak to your constitutional comments and questions. Well, first of all, the way I look at it is there are some things that, we won't all agree on in the Constitution, correct? But that's what was voted in. So that's what we need to hold most foremost, for all the people and hold them to the same standard. What people forget about with the Constitution, when you open it up, you read this is our mission statement, who we are, where we come from. But what they need to remember is the people are here, and then there's the Constitution, and then, those are officials and so on and so forth. And it outlines our duties and responsibilities of what you can and can't do. So all law has to coincide back to the Constitution. You can't make laws that are unconstitutional outside the abilities of your position. I'd like to speak to the sovereign immunity comment. I agree with Fred. I think that with sovereign immunity, what the intent, which I hope, was for outside business entities. I don't think that we should be able to enforce sovereign immunity against our own members. It's really weird to me that there's legislation and then you're a tribal member and then your own tribe can say, oh, and you sue them for your wrongdoing within the legislation. They can say to you, oh, wait, sovereign immunity. I don't even, how? You're the sovereign people that support sovereign immunity. So I think that that's not okay. I think that what we could do is write a resolution that shows the intent of the law on how sovereign immunity should be exercised.
Anyone else? Okay, folks, this is gonna wrap up the portion of the tribal council. Fred would like to speak.
I have a problem with sovereign immunity, but really over time we've developed the sovereign immunity, like Mike Petoskey was one of our judges. He described the evolution of sovereign immunity from the king can do no wrong. That's where it came from. And we've adopted it, and we've made it to the point where we can do no wrong. And that's bad. I actually have a solution for it, and it's based in standing. We've also adopted a court process that's based on the system that's beaten us down. And what we really need to do is enable the court system to help tribal citizens sue us, and I don't think, people think that when we enable suits, that we're gonna get inundated with a whole bunch of lawsuits, and that may really not happen for a short period of time, but that's not gonna happen a lot, because it's really difficult to sue. And you have to make factual statements, you have to make statements that have reason. And I believe that we need a statute that gives standing in our court to sue us specifically when we step outside of the responsibilities that we've been given by the Constitution. Not sue us for our opinion, or not sue us for, being stupid. I can be stupid every day. But sue us for stepping outside the Constitution and doing things that we're not supposed to do. We should be able to be sued for that. And so maybe we need to make a statute for standing so that our court system will allow tribal citizens to do that. And then tribal citizens will feel enabled by it. I don't believe that it'll be abused. Somebody might do a whole bunch of lawsuits, but they're going to get beaten down by the fact that they've got to do it right. And, eventually we'll have people who will file reasonable suits that will stop us from doing things that are outside of our constitutional authority. And I think it would make us stronger. Jimmy, go ahead for the question.
Jimmy, would like to speak?
We're getting close to closing here, and I'm sure what I'm about to say, and I knew, so bear with me. I'm really trying hard because we talk about the language, so I'm sure that we all agree with this. Being a Dawa is all about freedom. Manda gishka going the benders win, a bit of wassing, manadenders win, meanwhile, we manadenders in. The freedom is to be a part of the people who, with integrity and pride, still have and speak our own language. Bending at the benders win, kinagwe o dawa nasa piyamcha. Manda, kinagyawan, matswin, yanaman, duwatswin. Ganani, ganinchin, the bending the freedom to share in common with all other Dawa customs, culture, and spirituality of our ancestors. Manda the bendes win Yamagwa. Kinamajidona Nigan Ejit Bejigoam, Kinel Majwin, Bagnagawin, Gigojwin, Minwa, Nagnagawin. The freedom we have today, we will bring to the future through unity, education, justice, communication, and planning. Kashibig Nakitana Mandan Nijrashin, Bimadzwin, Wadiamaga, Ajaygamin, Nenda, Binowatswin, Achipita Ndapin, Nabakwin, Zagedwin, Banadan Nawin, Akadewin, Waikwatswin, we will reach out to the next 7 generations by holding to culture values of wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, and truth. Kanakasana Ninda Daven Dasmananin, Jimmy Gray, Nakasanawin, Jimno Mizioli, Anaka Lokishik Roki Nishnabek, and Napskamwad Mamba, Gabe Madziwena.
We will utilize our tribal assets to provide the necessary tools to become successful, hardworking community members who proudly represent our culture. With these values, we will move the tribe forward. And I think that's how we all feel.
Law would like to speak.
I get that all the time. Keep it short. Request Julie for that. I think that's very appropriate. I just want to read from the Constitution in regards to sovereign immunity, section 18, tribal immunity from suit. Little tribes of bands of Odawa Indians, including all subordinate entities, shall be immune from suit, except to the extent that the tribal council clearly and expressly waives its sovereign immunity. And officials and employees of the tribe acting within the scope of their duties or authorities shall be immune from suit. So if there's any changes in terms of our sovereign immunity, it has to be done constitutionally. And so that's where it takes 20% of the voting public to change any articles within the Constitution. And I know that we've tried, and I have in the past had tribal citizens and met to have constitutional meetings, and they kind of always fell apart, lack of interest. So if anybody can get a group together that can accomplish any changes to the Constitution, I applaud you. Miigwech.
Fred would like to speak.
Jimmy doesn't need for that clarification, but my statement has no violations of the Constitution. It would enable, we can, as a council, determine who can sue us for what. And so the statute would clearly enable the citizenry to sue us. And the other statement, the other portion of that statement is a different type of immunity. And these are complicated, but we need to protect our employees, and that's qualified immunity. That's not sovereign immunity. Those are our employees. If they're doing their job, they can't be sued for doing their job. But that's qualified immunity. There are a series of different immunities in courts, but we do have to protect our employees constitutionally now. We can't allow them to be sued for doing their job. Now, if they're doing something outside of their job, they are not protected by the Constitution or any immunities.
But the court still protects them. The court still enables immunity against that. So the way the court, they have a case that came out of trial court that says, even if they're acting outside the scope of their authority, they still get qualified immunity.
Well, and we can affect that with legislation. We can stop the court from, the court can only do what the laws and the Constitution allow them to do. So if we allow them to have workers with qualified or sovereign immunities, they will.
So what the court says, what the trial court has said is, even if, let's say you're a supervisor, you fire somebody for violations of the Fair Employment Statute. If the supervisor has the authority to fire the employee, regardless if they go against the law and do it against the law, the employee cannot sue the supervisor because they have the authority to fire them.
Exactly, and we can make a statute that eliminates that problem. It's a very complicated issue, but we can do that. We can make a statute, we can try. I have a plan, but it takes a lot of votes, and it's a very complicated process. And I believe that we should enable people who are wronged to sue those who wronged them in our courts.
I'd like to speak on that. supporting Fred for that cause. I also believe within those laws to fine tune them. When folks work outside the scope of their authority, you have to ask yourself, okay, why is the tribe protecting them outside the scope of their authority? I would think in addition to opening that up so people can sue their tribe, and I think that would make maybe the people in their scope of authority or whatever position is, hey, I should think twice about breaking a law against a tribal citizen. Because let's face it, folks, your only way to get there, to get any sort of, due diligence is to sue your tribe. So, and another thing that when you walk in as a tribal citizen, you put a lawsuit forth and you're reaching out to a different branch of government as the judicial, right? You want fairness and equality. But then the tribe comes at you and says, sovereign immunity, I think I can do anything that I want to. So, and then, that's unacceptable. Another thing that's unacceptable, when folks break the law against our tribal citizens and in their positions, we should not be paying to represent these. That is ludicrous to me because they wrongfully broke the law. Because the tribal citizen that has to come forth to actually sue the tribe for wrongful, let's say it's an employee issue, wrongful termination, that's on their dime entirely. There is no, and in the Fair Employment Statute, say you win. You can win up to $50,000. That doesn't pay you back, your lawyer or what have you. And then this person over here that was like, well, you broke the law, so we're just going to hand some money over to this guy and we're just going to keep going. That doesn't mean that the person that broke the law, actually, anything's going to happen to them. We can just keep marching on into, the future, just allowing that. I think that's totally unacceptable. We should be able to hear all tribal citizens fairly, and so our court system can start writing opinions that are held as case law to help our tribal citizens. We should have fair judgment at all times for everyone.
Okay, this is going to be our last
Question, and then I have asked the tribal elder to say a blessing. The election board is providing food that everybody's welcome to. Please feel free to socialize with these candidates while we're having the break. But here is the last question.
Okay, this has to do with,
I think, separation of powers. But what is
hello?
when, this one's for Fred, I guess.
When is it appropriate for tribal council to review personnel files of
Government employees?
The question was, when is it appropriate for tribal council to review the personnel files of employees of the administration, I presume? Never.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. Tribal council is looking at handling legislation for the operations of government. The executive has the responsibility of employee functions and behaviors. So yeah, tribal council should have no involvement whatsoever in employee documents, records. And I'm not even sure if there's any interest at all that they should even be looking at, unless we write legislation as far as disciplinary guidelines. But outside of writing guidelines, no involvement whatsoever.
Tamara would like to speak after Marcy.
The legislative branch should not be reviewing personnel files of executive employees. The only files that they should have access to, personnel, are legislative branch employees' personnel files, and that goes along with hiring. Tribal council has a responsibility to hire the staff of the legislative branch only.
I have to agree with Ben, with what he said, that the the legislative branch should not be able to review executive employees' personal files.
Fred, one more time.
That goes back to my original statement, never. But when tribal council takes actions that move bodies of government away from the executive and put them under their purview, then we have situations where they should look at the personnel files. And since we should never do it, then those bodies should not be under the purview of tribal council. All administrative activities should be under the purview of the executive branch so that we don't become entangled into looking at personnel files, because that's not our job. Never. Miigwech.
Julie?
It's really confusing when you talk about separation of power and the ability of the executive to handle themselves. And right now, I have to say there is one situation. Because the ethics committee falls under tribal council and the ethics is specific to elected officials, there have been complaints against the executive that have come where we have had to request files from the executive, never personnel files. We do not or have not had situations where we requested personnel files. So I'm saying never, we have no business. That's why we have that separation of powers when you talk about personnel. So as far as I know, we don't review, or I haven't reviewed, but as an ethics committee member, I do know that there are some records that we had to requisition that were not personnel files per se. So, right now with ethics set up the way they are, that does occur, that we do see some files.
Does the executive have rights to deny those requests? Okay. Let's say the ethics committee wants to get request filed from the executive. Does the executive have the right to deny those requests?
Have they?
Do they have the right to? I don't know if they have. Is there anything based in law that, like they do the executive privilege? Does executive get executive privilege?
They have from time to time. They have, let's just say they have denied from time to time. And again, that goes back to interpretation of
The intent of the law. So, when we talk about legislation and writing laws, we need to make sure that we're real clear so that there is, you can't have too big a gray area where people are coming in and saying this, this is the intent, but this is how I interpret it. So we need to be real careful and, Fred's a biggie on legislation, so
Okay.
kind of like that.
We're going outside now of what we are here to do, so I am going to let Mrs. Arlene McIntosh stand up
Say our prayer.
for our meal.
Başarı koymayı düşünürken Measurement big wedge Kenegado abbreviation Matthew big wedge deviation Mother region. Motion we're going to go HHK Montpelier King Gaja and Gaja as you're not going to do any big measurement. Big wedge.
Okay, we'll take a break and then reconvene for the chair and vice chair portion of our meeting.